A week later, Karan Johar liked it, and a month later, Alia Bhatt commented on it, and it just
Meet Dhruv Bindra, the 22-year-old who founded and sold his startup Style without spending $1 on marketing.
we became a trending search term in the US. I used to live my high school life by a stopwatch. And I had an Excel sheet on my desktop. Got the idea all of 2022. Growth slowed down 100%. It was just the most incredible experience. For 8 months, I feel like I'm the worst marketer ever. Now, that was the moment that I sat down with Rahul, and all of a sudden, when I was sitting in the summer being like, in these 3 months, I want to hit 10K downloads by the end of it.
How did you keep coming up with ideas and going through it when nothing was working?
I just failed for so goddamn long, and I understood so clearly why things weren't working out. Very atypical Indian family. Like, they know the girls I dated. My mom calls me up. She's like, Dhruv, I'm gonna block you. My own mom is tired of like seeing my face. Weeks before the deal was closing, we're just gonna shut shop down. The heroic tales are only cool because people failed in the past. When this story works out, it's gonna sound so fucking good. Professional hands.
Have you done a lot of podcasts or like stuff like this before?
First, yeah.
How are you feeling?
A little nervous. I think it'll be fun.
I think it'll be great.
Yeah.
Has there been no reach outs? Has there been no desire for people to bring you
No,
on?
a lot.
And what is your thought process now that things are kind of, you reach a stage of success? I'm sure you have a lot of people wanting you on interviews, on podcasts, articles.
Yeah.
How do you qualify all of that?
I think the reason why I didn't want to do them initially was just because it was a distraction. Now I have a lot more time on my hands. And I think secondarily, there's this big internal sense of wanting to pay it forward. So I was just looking back on all the cold emails I used to send out initially when I was like a completely unproven kid just trying to make it. And there were people who I still look up to so much who were willing to take a bet on me. And I think a lot of what networking ends up being is proven people doing favors for other proven people, because it's just like a circle of people wanting to just help each other out. So I'm trying to make an active effort to help people, like high schoolers. I'm doing a podcast with a high schooler at Phillips Academy like in 2 weeks. Just a kid who reached out to me on LinkedIn. The one filter I do have is I will never respond back on the first email. Rarely on the second, is typically the third. That's the only filter I need. Just show me you're a hustler. I don't need you to have like a crazy LinkedIn experience. Show me you're a hustler, and I will root for you, and I will try to pay it forward.
That's a beautiful filter to have. I've never heard anyone say it like that. That's actually a good story you were just telling us about the economics lecture that the hall that you got to just swipe on Style. And yeah, how did you develop that? That hustle culture, where does that stem from for you?
Probably goes all the way back to my childhood and just how my parents raised me. So both my parents grew up in like very low or middle class families, and we were very fortunate for dad's company to have done pretty well in the last couple of decades. But I think the value systems that my grandparents sort of inculcated in my parents was very intentionally and powerfully passed on to me. So for instance, like I used to go shopping in Arjun Marg and never wore a branded item of clothing until I think I was like 13 years old. Like I still remember my 13th birthday. I begged my mom for this 3,000 rupee jacket. And like I asked her for it in December, and she's like, we'll get it. My birthday's in Feb. She's like, we'll get it for you like on your birthday. 12th or 13th birthday, something like that. So I think the value of money was always really important, and as a function of that, like the hustle culture kind of just came about. And my older sister also has been like a massive inspiration for me. She was always like the goody two shoes, like nerdy kid in high school. All the teachers loved her. I was like the troublemaker class clown until like the 3rd grade, but then slowly I just wanted to be more like my sister. And so yeah, over a period of time with my parents, inculcating the work hard so you can have money, and my older sister doing it just because that's the way you should be. Eventually, I just like ended up being someone who I think takes pride in working hard.
Seems like you had a very positive influence in your own household, and I think
Yeah.
that's very rare to find. We often talk about how just within your own environments you're so heavily influenced, right, by your parents. I have an elder sister as well, and that transcends into how you end up in some capacity. Has that played a very, very significant role in where you ended up?
My family has been like my absolute rock for as long as I can remember. And all my friends are like pleasantly surprised by how close we are. Like, I am actively looking forward to moving back in with my parents, like in like a year or 2 years, whenever it is that my stint in San Francisco comes to an end. Which is something like kids like are so scared to do, right? But like my dad's my best friend. Like yeah, my sister's like my third parent. I know it's always been like a really, really incredible household, very supportive. We're all very involved in each other's lives. And yeah, I think we're both my parents now are founders. So mom was a stay-at-home mom for about 20 years. And then around the 10th, when I was in the 10th grade, she was like, I want to get back into it as well. So I think there's also a level of connect that I have with them because like professionally speaking, there's so much advice we can keep giving to each other. Like I'm learning all the new age social media strategies. They have all the old person business and people wisdom. So there's a lot that we just end up talking about, because of that. And yeah, I think we're also just very, very transparent, like very atypical Indian family. Like they know the girls I dated from like the second I asked them out and stuff like that.
That's a really healthy relationship to have with them.
Very lucky.
I have a similar relationship with my family, and I don't think I would not trade it for anything in the world, man.
Yeah.
To come home, to feel so involved in each other's lives. And it's funny because I live in America, right? It's a completely or extraordinary concept for them to be so tight with your families.
Yeah.
Where they're like, well, at 18 we're thrown out of our houses. I'm like, I can't wait to go back to sit with my mom in the morning and like shoot the shit about the rest of our family.
Yeah.
That's shit that I savor.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't have that with their families.
Yeah.
So it's incredible to find that and to actually have, again, the cognizant mindset of everyone being in the same place.
Yeah. No,
That's pretty cool.
we're super lucky.
Must have been unique for you being an only child though, right?
I wouldn't say I'm that close to my parents. We do talk about everything important, sure, but the little things like you said, they'll know all the girls you date from the second you ask them out. Mine won't, right? And so that level of openness isn't there. They're also a little older than most parents of my friends. My parents are 65 now. And so there is a lot of that old school thinking. They're not conservative by any means, but there is a lot of that old school thought, and there is that disconnect between the two of us. And for most of my life, even now, I think that's just a personality trait. I've been relatively reserved. And so at some level, it's also hard for them to get to know me really well, not because of anything to do with them, it's just me. And so that is something I'm definitely actively working on, but it just is what it is, right? And hopefully over time that gets better. But yeah, I do think having that type of closeness with family is arguably the most important thing in life. It's those little things, relationships that really makes life meaningful and actually worth it, right? Like you can have the best businesses, the best startups, you can be successful, but if you don't have the relationships with the people you care about, who cares? Okay, so yeah. You mentioned you're excited to come back home after your stint in SF. Let's talk about that stint in SF. How did that come about? What's going on?
Yeah, was super lucky. I've been building Styl, a fashion app in the US, for the last 2 years alongside school. And 3 days before I graduated, we got very lucky. We were able to sell the company. And as a part of that transaction, this entire Styl team, myself included, we're going to be moving to San Francisco full time and working for them. So I would love for this to be, an absolute rocket ship that I never end up leaving. But I think knowing me, my heart has always been in India. So whether it's 1 year or 5 years, whatever it may be, I definitely want to come back home and build something for my country soon.
Interesting. I saw a few of your reels where you were posting last 75 days of college. You're gonna record something unique every day just for yourself. And so was you trying to make the most of college in your last year, maybe shifting focus a little bit away from your startup, part of the reason why you wanted to sell? Or is it just something that just came about and it was a good deal and you took it?
So, okay, this actually goes back to the whole hustle culture thing.
Yeah.
Somewhere around the 10th grade, role models I had in high school influenced me in a way which in hindsight I think was net negative, where overworking and talking about how you're working at the expense of having fun was something that they were proud to talk about, and by extension something that I started taking pride in. So I used to live my high school life by a stopwatch, like literally preparing for my board exams. I would sit down in the morning, time how much I'm studying for, and I had an Excel sheet on my desktop. And if it was less than 10 hours, I couldn't go to sleep at night. Like it was like such a terrible, like toxic mindset I'd set up for myself. And I carry that into college as well, where I was having fun every single week. I made it a point to do that. But still, for some reason, my sense of self and my identity was rooted in that the typical Silicon Valley like signaling of I'm working harder than everyone else and I need to tell the entire world about it. It was only, I think, in like the last 2-3 months or so, and especially like the process of making reels is a lot of it's just like scrolling up in your camera roll and seeing what's there to find inspiration, that I started internalizing what were the moments in college that I am genuinely going to remember for life. And it was like in those moments I'm like wasting time with, playing FIFA with the guys that I was staying at home with. It's like doing things that I like serendipitously, you just have fun. Like those were the moments that I'm going to cherish for life. Those are the moments that truly make me happy. And yes, work has its own place. And over the summer, for instance, we maybe went out once the entire 3 months. So I'm completely okay with periods where you have to sacrifice everything. But like, yeah, I'm never willing to give up on having fun, like in the entirety of like my college experience. And I never did. So it was sort of like this earth-shattering realization of I am not that crazy, like work is the only thing I care about kind of guy. And so in my last 75 days, which is around the time that I realized that, I wanted to start documenting that journey for myself so I could look back on this digital archive long after I had graduated and remember like one memorable thing I'd done every day. However, 4 days into it, I stopped the series completely because it felt really inorganic to be actively seeking something that was unique, because at the end of the day, it was still catering to an audience. And so I was like, forget this. This is genuinely just for me. I want to remove any sort of pressure that this is supposed to be something that an audience is going to find appealing. And I did that stuff, but just silently. And yeah, one of the best things I did in college is the way I led those last 2 months.
That's beautiful. I actually do have another question about your reels, because this is something I've thought about with the podcast as well, is like when we're filming reels, and I got the same idea from watching your reels, is your reels are very authentic. You're being very real, you're talking about real things. But on the flip side of it, you're also a really smart guy. You know how to garner attention. You know what will work, what won't. So at what point does that authenticity become just calculated content and calculated authenticity? How much of it is real? Because that's something I also struggle. Like I pick up the phone, I'll just chat shit. But like at some level, am I doing that because I know that? Like, how do you navigate that?
No one's asked me that before. And that is the real reason why post the summer, the style content went from 2 to 3 times a day to maybe once a week. Because here's what happened, right? Me posting videos was entirely unplanned. So to give you like the quick history of the company, got the idea fall of 2022. It wasn't even mine. It was a friend of mine. We recruited Rahul to be like our front-end engineer. Eventually realized this kid is absolutely cracked. Told him we wanted him to be a co-founder as well. Walked into the summer of 2023 with an Airbnb in San Francisco. Took 3 months, launched the app. The initial friend of mine who had the idea, he decided to leave the company because he got an amazing VC job. We were still in touch. Like he would give his advice from time to time, but he also wanted to do like a study abroad program. Things just didn't line up as well. So it was down to Rahul and I didn't do any of the heavy lifting with tech, right? Rahul was really like the guy who built all of it. And so marketing was my responsibility. And I told myself I wanted 10,000 downloads by the end of the summer. We had done 1,200 downloads on day one, thanks to like a launch post on LinkedIn. And the next 8 months, from the end of the summer up until December, we did a grand total of 800 downloads. I felt like a complete failure, like I'd let Rahul down. And I never in that entire period tried making videos myself because there's so much inertia associated with picking up the phone and like, putting your own face out there, right? So it was out of sheer desperation of after circulating sorority girls at my college and none of those videos breaking out. And then like this viral growth hack that we had come up with, guessmysorority.com. I can tell you guys that's like a whole other story later. But it was after all of that I made my first video and was so lucky that ended up doing well. And so then from there, it was just like a really organic process of ideas were coming to me in the shower, and it was all really authentic. And just day after day, I was like putting out videos. And even though I had the pressure of consistency, I never lost that authenticity bit. Then we went in the summer where I had to dial in on consistency to the point where the ideas weren't coming to me as frequently as the algorithm demanded I start churning them out. So it got to the point where I myself felt like I was being a little inauthentic in the way that these slowly started becoming really boring ads. And the best gauge for that was my own mother calling me up when I was doing that shaving series where every single day, like it was the exact same video. I'd be like, what was it? Day X of not shaving my mustache until 100,000 girls download my app. Exact same script. Then sharing with the viewers how many downloads we had left. And it was like a call to action to download the app. Day 29 or 30, my mom calls me up. She's like, Dhruv, I'm going to block you. Every time I open Instagram, I just get this jump scare with you and your ugly stash. And I was like, dude, my own mom is tired of like seeing my face. I was tired of saying the same thing every day, but I had to carry that through until I hit my 100K goal, right? But in the last few days of recording that, I couldn't wait for it to be over because it felt really, really inauthentic. Then but for the most part, the reels were pockets of the day after doing a lot of the dev work or talking to users or shipping features and then building in public, sharing with people what is it that we had put out. The second we went back into the semester, the disposable time we had was slashed in less than half because I was prioritizing, investing into like the friendships that I had as well. That also, obviously, it's a zero-sum game. It takes time out as well. Our development speed reduced dramatically, which then meant that if I want to put out a video every day and I want these videos to be novel, learnings of features we'd put out, but now we're barely putting out features, what am I making videos about? So it's very clear I had two options. I could either dial in completely on being this broken record that over and over again just says the exact same thing. And I don't mean this in like a reductive way, but like most company pages that are trying to promote themselves end up being like that, right? Or I could just, at the expense of slowing down growth completely, but being more true to myself, just stop posting as often. So only post when I either had an idea that I was really excited about because there was some like intrinsic entertainment value that my audience would get, or if we had pushed out a feature and I either wanted feedback from my audience or just wanted to promote it a little bit. And so yeah, growth slowed down 100%. There were definitely periods where I was still forced to against my own preferences, I won't say will, no one forced me, but against my own preferences, have to put out some boring ads. But that is a piece that I will 100% make sure I don't lose going forward. So if I do want to be consistent with my content, I will make it a point that we're consistent with new feature devs and all of that stuff, so I can be true to myself while doing all the algorithm hacking that's required.
I think that finding that happy medium of authenticity and advocating for what you want to advocate for is always hard.
Yeah.
I studied social media for a long time, and I think the biggest struggle that you'll always have is how do you find that intersection between the two? What you did particularly well was founder-led marketing is a very novel concept, right? People don't know enough about it, and more than that, people don't know how to leverage it to the best of their abilities. In that window of time where you were building all of these reels, trying to be very authentic, did you have a lot of creative blocks? Did you have a lot of periods of time where you weren't quite sure what the end goal was, what the purpose was?
So what I realized very quickly was there was this one bit I had about explaining the app, which is like the canonical Tinder for clothes, swipe right, swipe left, swipe up, right? And so what I had to figure out is, how do I have different hooks rotating over and over again with some entertainment value, keep this body the same, and then in the end, it's a call to action. Because it was so structured, I was very lucky that hook, I could find enough inspiration by being chronically online every night for a bit, and then just like finding inspiration from what other creators were doing. I do think that once like and doing a series is definitely a crutch, right? The fact that every day I'm just shaving my mustache, I know this is happening. It's one guaranteed video I am getting out. So maybe if you asked me this question in the summer, I would have said I was having a creative block. In hindsight, I don't remember having one particularly. I also really enjoyed like blocking out my shower time every single day, where I would not step out of the shower until I had an idea. And we'd run out of hot water fairly quickly in SF. So I had about like 10 to 15 minutes until I knew the cold water was coming. I think that kind of like pressure just like forced my brain to come up with ideas. But I never like... A lot of people are really structured with it. Like I see these startups having 60-day content calendars. I'm like, 1-day content calendar. Sometimes that 1 day is think of the idea in the shower. Like the Alia Bhatt video we did, right? I don't know if you guys saw that. Okay. It was like, we'd seen that a lot of our viewers were from Mumbai. And so I was just in the shower, like thinking about looking at that dashboard. And I was like, what are the odds an actress has watched one of our videos? So I come out of the shower, I'm like talking to Rahul. I'm like, who's your favorite actress? He's like, Alia Bhatt. Like, what do you think the odds that Alia Bhatt has watched our videos? And we started doing like this probability calculation. I'm like, wait, this is a perfect idea for a video. And so there was just a video about that. And a month later, a week later, Karan Johar liked it, and a month later, Alia Bhatt commented on it. It was like the coolest thing ever. And that video got us a bunch of downloads. And in hindsight, everyone was like, that was such a genius strategy. Like, how did you think of it? I was like, I was just having fun with my content. Like, it wasn't this. In hindsight, people always like think everything was super intentional, but sometimes you're just shooting the shit and the shit sticks. So there's a lot of luck involved.
You've always also had like the clown personality, right? Which just fits so well into doing something like this.
Yeah.
You can be it's much easier. It just comes naturally to you. That kind of energy.
Dude, honestly, I think the single thing that I'm the happiest with as a byproduct of having built Style was I was always this clownish self in high school. I was very self-assured, and I was always like this at home. Like my parents and my sister think I'm like the funniest guy they've ever met, and they see a side of me no one else has. But going into college in the US, for whatever reason, I had like 40 filters up, right? And I don't think really until my last semester in college, most people saw the real me. Like most of my sense of humor is in Hindi anyways. I don't know. It's like that bad, like it's English, that barrier anyways sort of existed. But I just became really self-conscious, and I always thought like those kids were a lot cooler than me. And I just became like quite silent and boring at parties and stuff. What Style allowed me to do was share my stupid sense of humor with like just anyone who wanted to watch it. And as a byproduct of getting validation from people who weren't in my high school and had known me since my childhood, or who weren't my parents, so people I hadn't developed that sort of comfort with, validating that, dude, I find you funny, I cannot explain to you what that did for my confidence levels. Like my white friends, my non-Indian friends saw a completely different side of me post the summer than they did before. And it is single-handedly because of that confidence boost I finally got. So I'm glad the clownish personality shines through now, because that is me.
I want to pull that thread a little bit more, because you mentioned how you used to be self-assured because you knew what your strength was, which is like being humorous, being funny. You hold that true to yourself, but you also had to filter yourself moving to America. How do you regain that sense of confidence outside of course, the clownish personality that you were able to portray online? Because moving to America is a very, very big feat for anyone and everyone. You went there, you studied in college, you built a startup. I'm sure there were enough periods where you felt like your self-esteem was low, you felt low on self-confidence. How were those periods for you, and how did you regain that level of confidence?
Again, I don't think it was as intentional as I will make it out to be in hindsight. Like it was all, things just were happening over a period of time, right? So I've always been a people's pleaser. People found me funny in India, so I would crack jokes and I was pleasing people that way. I get to the US, newfound territory, week one, I'm cracking jokes between my accent that people won't understand. I don't even think it's that thick, but people just won't understanding it. Being handicapped by not being able to make jokes about cultural context or in Hindi. Like most of my jokes are just like Hindi abuses and like funny voices as well, right? Like all that material getting taken away, combined with the stress of these are new people. I want them to like me. It's so much safer to just be like the nice guy. Everyone likes a nice guy, right? But to be that quirky, goofy kid who you find funny, that's harder territory. And so I still remember, like, I tried being that person. Jokes weren't landing. And then very quickly, I just like, okay, cool. I will just not crack jokes with these people now. And then, as I was saying, over a period of time, that fundamental inner self of people pleaser never really left. It's just that I found an avenue to be a people pleaser through the sense of humor I had since I was a kid, but luckily found the validation through Instagram. Because now I didn't have to see on someone's face that they didn't find me funny. They commented and liked it. And eventually when that happens enough, like on aggregate, now if someone doesn't laugh at my joke, I'm like, your loss. Or like, maybe you just like, I'm fine with it now, right? Because I know there's enough people who like appreciate my sense of humor. And for me, that's enough.
It's the first story I've heard in person of something positive about social media. You mentioned your growth, marketing growth hack. What was that?
Oh, guess my sorority? Damn, dude, this is a real game changer for us. So, okay. After the summer, as I said, marketing was my responsibility, and we had unnecessarily undertaken the burden of something known as the cold start problem. So when you're trying to set up a marketplace, you need to get demand and supply at the same time, right? But it's a chicken and the egg. Do you get the people first or the suppliers first? So it's referred to as the cold start problem. Now, Style doesn't have a cold start because with all the product catalog, we were building bots that were just scraping all these online catalogs. So we had all the clothes. We didn't need people to come from specific cities or colleges. Anyone all across the US could download the app and like swipe on it, right? But in my head, I was like, no, we have to go campus by campus because that's what like consumer apps like Tinder did. That those are the stories you hear, and that's the way we have to grow. So I dialed in all my efforts on campus marketing. So again, all the typical things, sliding QR codes underneath every single dorm room, pasting posters all across campus with like quirky puns and stuff. We tried everything, and we did relatively well. I think most of those 800 downloads were from girls at Duke, and it's a relatively small school. So as a percentage, it wasn't bad at all. And the good thing was, because it's a small school, because it's a high density of users, I could recognize my users by their names. And I also knew that Duke's like a very Greek heavy school, so like this sorority fraternity culture. I could tell that like just reading these names, girls in sororities are disproportionately using Style more, which intuitively makes sense, right? These are girls who are going out more often. They need new clothes to wear more often. Therefore, they are window shopping more often. But when I realized that, the immediate thought was, cool, how do I get every single girl in the US to download and start swiping on Style? So I was thinking about this over winter break, and I noticed that sorority pages on Instagram follow back the girls in their sororities. So what I did is I built a scraper that scraped 1.3 million Instagram accounts. So I had a database of every sorority girl in the US with their correct affiliation. And then I built this website called guessmysorority.com, where you log in with Google, you answer 5 silly questions about like girl math and who do you find hotter, Timothy Chalamet or Michael B. Jordan, and you swipe on 5 items of clothing. And what then happens is we try to impress you with the strength of our algorithms on the basis of your swipes and tell you what we think your sorority is. But in actuality, when you logged in with Google, we got your name. It was this really simple Levenstein distance algorithm, cross-referencing it against our scrape database. 90% of the times, we knew the answer from the second you logged in. So the whole thing was just an elaborate magic trick until you got your result at the end. And Spotify Wrapped was happening around the same time. So I took a lot of inspiration from their distribution strategy. So the final result was presented as this beautiful shareable asset that you could put on your Snapchat or Instagram stories. And yeah, we seeded it with a couple of sorority girls at Duke and a few other Greek schools, and it just blew up. Like, I think got like 1.2 million page impressions in less than 2 weeks, all organic. 1 in 10 people who took it on Snapchat's in-app browser, presumably because these girls are uploading the results, being like, what is happening? Try this link out. And we became a trending search term in the US on TikTok because there was a whole conspiracy theory happening that the second you like take this quiz, we like hack into your Google account and you shouldn't be taking this quiz. But that just like furthered our virality even more. It was just the most incredible experience, followed by, I think, like, genuinely rock bottom in my life. Because here's what happened, right? From my perspective, it's like this co-founder that I always looked up to left. Rahul is doing a great job with tech. For 8 months, I feel like I'm the worst marketer ever. And then all of a sudden, in these 2 weeks, everyone's being like, this is the most genius play ever. So I'm like, maybe I have the potential, but I'm just working on the wrong idea. So that was the moment that I sat down with Rahul and I was like, it is a disservice to you for me to be doing marketing. I still remember this. It was like an A4 size sheet in like one of the cafes at Duke. And I write down 8 things I was going to try out before we were going to shut Style down. And I was like, I don't need you to develop the app anymore. The app is fine. He was like optimizing it for it to be scaled up even more. And I'm not even getting users in the door. So I'm like, you can just chill out now. And the 6th or 7th thing was put my own face in a video. And I knew a lot of the hooks to be optimized from the things I tried around with different sorority girls. So I knew the script, but this was the first time it was my face. And I got 500K on TikTok. I got only 20K on Instagram. And this is like a learning for like people who are trying this out on Instagram, a little growth hack. On TikTok, if you upload the same video again, TikTok has too many videos being uploaded. So they're going out of their way to take down reposts of the same video. Instagram has the opposite problem. On Instagram, Meta wants more and more creators to be posting things. So you can post the exact same video across 20 other accounts and it increases your surface area of going viral, okay? So when I see that TikTok's given this 500K reach and Instagram's only 20K, I'm like, no, there needs to be more surface area for this to get lucky. So, wow, I forgot this period even happened, but before all of Style, but actually during Style as well, I used to make crypto videos. It was called WTF Web3 Fundamentals, and every video was out with WTF, what the fuck is blockchain? What the fuck is Ethereum, right? And so terrible TikTok channel and Instagram channel. I think I had like 1,500 followers, most of them my friends, and each video would get like barely a couple hundred views. But there was enough consistency because I never gave up. 7 months, I was posting like 3 times a week. Like tons of videos. I archived all those videos. I changed the name from Web3 Fundamentals to something like Style_AI, changed the logo, and I repost the same video. And it got 4 million views. And all of a sudden, when I was sitting in the summer being like, in these 3 months, I want to hit 10K downloads by the end of it, and none of that happened, we suddenly hit 10K downloads in a day. And to me, it was just like, how is my sense of worth rooted in something this non-deterministic? Like, I will never lose faith in myself again, which is easier said than done. But then from there, it was really like, okay, social media is a game of runs and a game of consistency. I just cannot give up. And every video needs to be a scientific experiment. Every hook is a hypothesis I'm trying to prove or disprove. So great, this video didn't do well. Cool, now I know what not to use in my next video. And from there on, it just became this really fun and rewarding process of trying things out.
Okay, a few things there. So you said social media, very non-deterministic. So then if you're testing a hypothesis, how can you be sure that the outcome is correct? Because like maybe your hook was good, but social media just fucked you.
Yeah. So the way to do that, great question, is not to base off your evaluation based on views. It's to go deep into the dashboard and see viewer drop off per frame. And I will say TikTok is a lot better for this than Instagram. So what I noticed with TikTok earlier on, and this doesn't happen now, if over 50% of my viewers would stay by the 5-second mark, that video every single time would cross 100,000 views. So it was, what is the language? What is the lighting? What is the humor I'm using in those first 5 seconds? Because as I said, I knew my script for explaining style and the call to action was rock solid. It was just the hook that I had to keep changing. So those are the lessons that I kept learning. So it's like sometimes you just use lowercase and for some reason it works better. Sometimes the placement of the captions that makes all the difference. And then over time, as you keep reusing the things that you thought initially was the reason for the success, and that's validated over and over again, the potential for it to be attributable to something non-deterministic or something that was just lucky goes down, right? Like, you don't have 20 coincidentally viral videos in a row just by trying out this one thing consistently. So yeah, I think it's over a period of time, you just keep testing, improving, disproving your hypotheses, and you develop like an intuition for it.
And over this time, so you spoke a little bit about these little hacks that you've found that work for social media, but what did you learn about just the process of ideation and coming up with something like a good idea? What were your filters for, oh, this is a good idea, this is what I should try, or this is not? And yeah, just how did you keep coming up with ideas and going through it when, nothing was working?
For videos or the app?
Both. Well, app was doing relatively, like the app dev was good, but marketing it and doing everything on social media, like the ideas for all of that.
So the app, I mean, we were reiterating on this every single day, right? And so the advantage of being a guy building a women's fashion app is you don't trust your own intuition, which means you aren't biased. So insofar as you are talking to your users regularly, you are able to read between the lines of their complaints and say, okay, they're complaining about this feature being useless, but maybe it's because like I'm not presenting it to them at the right point. So you have that kind of like, in tune understanding. Then the ideas become very apparent because you just keep getting so many complaints from people, which is fantastic, right? On the video side of things, as I said, I think being chronically online just before going to bed and like being mindful about the way I'm doom scrolling. And I say that very intentionally because there's you scrolling on Instagram to entertain yourself, and then there's you scrolling to see why am I, like psychoanalyzing, why am I staying and watching this video? And then tapping on the creator's profile and saying, okay, this creator has been posting every day. Why was it that this was their breakout video and the other videos didn't do that well? And going down the rabbit hole of like analyzing all of that ultimately is what gave me most of my ideas. But yeah, that's, I think you just need you develop an intuition as well. As I said, as you keep making this, you understand what your audience likes and doesn't like. But social media also keeps changing, right? Like there's this new feature of Instagram on like trying out reels on people that don't follow you. I never got the opportunity. I stopped posting videos. I've never tried out this feature, but that would completely change the way I test out my videos, right? Because that completely de-risks any sort of like fear that you're going to lose followers over like a bad video. You can just test things out a lot more rapidly. I know of so many creator founders who have separate accounts where they test hooks out on first before like the reputational risk of putting it on their main account. I don't know if you need to be that insane about it, but there's ways to if you want to.
Interesting. I have a bit of a tangential question. I don't know if this will make the pod, but you mentioned, getting a lot of staying up at night, getting inspiration from all these content creators, and you work in AI, so I want to pick your brain about this, like in the industry. All of these models, like people have a problem with, oh, it's trained on stuff that I have done, I should get rewarded for it. But in a sense, that's kind of what you did too, right? Like you got inspiration from other people, models are learning from other people. How do you feel about that? Like what's the issue? Because I don't really see much of an issue. Sure, it trained on other people's work, but I've read other people's work, I haven't done shit with it. Like, I don't know.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like, and this is going to be controversial as well, but I forget, there was this paper I read that was something about like the reason why all these scientific discoveries happen is because you're standing on the shoulders of giants. Yeah. And it's like all of science has evolved this fast because people are okay with building off of someone else's work, right? And it happens all the time. So why not in like creative fields as well? I'm perfectly okay with, I'd be flattered if someone came up with a Dhruv GPT tomorrow that was popping out scripts in the exact way that I was, and they were like leveraging. Fair game. You're right. I took inspiration in the exact same way. I think probably the gap exists where people think that it's a lazy way of copying them because they don't understand the extent to which there's actually a lot of effort required still in mimicking, like fine-tuning something on someone's content and then having still the ability to, let's say, have an AI avatar, like have that exact script come to life with the audio. There's still pieces of creativity and like places where it could fall apart, but because I think creators take a lot of pride in their art and they want it to be something that is difficult to accomplish, the thought that there's something that's making this super easy and accessible, thereby diminishing the amount of effort that's required, is sort of like a fundamental affront to their own capabilities, is really where the asymmetry lies in the way that we appreciate it and they fear it.
That's interesting. That's actually very well said. I've never thought about it from that perspective. Like it might just be a lack of understanding of what it takes to actually build that. Like, it's not straightforward. That's interesting.
And you see this all across the board, right? You see this with factory workers hating robots because it's automating it, right? It's like, oh, this can't do it as well. It doesn't have like the craftsmanship that I do, or it could break down. It's not reliable at any point. I think fundamentally people are just like, they're insecure, right? We all are. And this is just the way that it manifests for content creators.
What's gonna be next for your content creation now that the journey has kind of shifted a lot for you with Style?
Yeah. I don't know. It was very, very rewarding to have my own face in terms of like building a personal brand as well. Like I've had the opportunity of meeting some incredible people thanks to it. But your company comes first, right? And so with this new company that I'm joining, I will never do something where at the expense of me not being able to get the views that's required. Because now it's a different game altogether. 100,000 downloads, we should be getting that a day now, right? So if that means that I need to be spending all my time doing performance marketing and identifying the right influencers and being the guy behind the scenes working with these people with existing platforms that are like 10x more, that is exactly what I will be doing. But if there's also an opportunity and value in me continuing to create videos, I'll do that as well. But I think it's an open question.
You're awfully young with a very polished, mature mindset. And I think that's part of probably why you've been able to do what you have. But how much of that is inherent to you, and how much of that do you think you've picked up from external influence and actually learned over a period of time?
I don't know if I can answer that because I don't think I'm polished. I think I'm actually super impulsive. Case in point, the 75 days thing, right? Like, I'm publicly announcing for the next 75 days, I'm going to be making this series. On the 71st day, I'm just like gone without like apologizing for it. I think like I'm not polished, but I'm very confident when I'm taking a decision. And if that decision is to undo a decision I took 4 days ago, I will do that with just as much confidence. And that comes from my dad. Like his business approach is the exact same. He will take decisions from his gut. And because there isn't that much backing to it, if your gut flips, have the confidence in yourself to like undo that decision. So I think that's probably where it comes from. And then if you're seeing any sort of polish, I think that's also coming from the fact that I just failed for so goddamn long and I understood so clearly why things weren't working out. I think I've had to sort of change my approach. Like one simple example, right? We never raised for Style. We just could never inspire enough investor confidence. I have applied to Y Combinator like 4 or 5 times. The names of the co-founders in the application changed between the first, second, and third time. I just was not willing to give up and I kept at it. So yeah, that went off on a tangent, but I don't think I'm polished, long story short.
I wanna dissect failure a lot more. We were talking about this on the way here as well. And we're also awfully young, a bit older than you. There's the fear of failure is just innate to most people in our shoes, and it should probably be the least feared thing for where we are in our lives. We're very privileged, we have opportunity, we're around the right people. Where did you find that balance in your own life where you were like, fuck it, I honestly don't mind failing because I know that it's going to probably push me to something better? Or what was that mindset for you when you were like, fuck this, like I'm just going to do what I want to do?
There's an answer that sounds good, that is true to some extent, but then there's the raw honest truth. And the raw honest truth is, regardless of who you are and what you've achieved, you will always feel like it's not enough. It's the hedonic treadmill, right? That everything just regresses to this mean baseline for you. Mm-hmm. And weeks before the deal was closing, I was also mentally prepared that there could be a non-zero possibility that we're just going to shut shop down, right? And does that, just because this third person saw value in what I have built, is that the only like point of validation that says everything I'd put into this company before that was valuable or not? Or is it just that person's bias, right? So I think I've learned to take a lot more pride in not how things end, like not just in the result, but in knowing the steps that were taken in the journey itself. So that's a raw honest truth that I think like it never really goes away. I've always been scared of failure. I'm still scared of failure. friends of mine who have achieved more are people I look up to. Like, comparison is the thief of joy, right? Friends of mine who have maybe wanted to touch wood, hit the things that we've been able to hit are like, how dare you not be grateful? But like, everyone's always looking upwards. Now, the way that I've learned to approach failure, this goes back to, I think honestly, dining table conversations as a kid, where, as I said before, my dad is my best friend, my dad's my hero, and he just has the most incredible stories from his rags to riches journey. And I think there are just things there that sound so incredible to me because they're moments of failure that he bounced back from. And as I dissected it more, it's like, dude, the Herculean tales or the heroic tales are only cool because people failed in the past. And so reframing rejections as, oh man, when this story works out, it's going to sound so fucking good, is exactly like the approach that I've been trying to take in life. And then it's just about, if you have that faith in yourself that like things will work out eventually, it's just about being damn generous with that timeline, right? Like, I felt like a complete failure because I gave myself 3 months to hit 10K downloads. But then I was like, forget 3 months. Let's take 2 years. Forget 2 years. Let's say over the course of the next decade, in my 20s, I'm actually going to make it. Then like even Travis Kalanick has like a call in this about, he's like the least lucky founder, right? Like he failed like at 8 different startups before Uber worked out really well. And now the entire world is like, wow, this is so cool. Like people love stories of rejection, because I think there's like a sense of relatability to it as well. But then also going back to, I think like the meta sort of philosophy that I live my life by is 4 simple words. So here's my Instagram bio as well. It's live stories worth telling. To me, ever since I was a kid, the sense of humor, all of it goes back to storytelling. This is why I love like what you guys are doing as well at podcasts, right? It's an opportunity to share stories with people. The idea of living a story worth telling, I think, is so intertwined with why I want to be a founder, is because I think it is the one profession that yields the best stories. Like even if my friends in quant will be making 10 times more than me, the second they start explaining to me the derivatives they're trading, I will fall asleep. No offense to any of my friends watching this, but it's a fact, right? But even if a founder is failing, there is just something so beautiful about hearing their journey that's why for me, I was like, this is definitely the path I want to go down. That is solely the reason. I don't care about like the money grab opportunity. I don't care about like the legacy as much as just, I want to live I want to live stories worth telling. And then I want to have people in my life to tell those stories to. And that's it. That's all I want out of my life. So if as a part of that story, I can have these rejections that I can spin around and talk about, like now in my own story, like having the sort of ability to say that in those 8 months when people were leaving the company, when things were working out, I stuck by it. And I'm so happy that hard work paid dividends down the line, makes the story like a lot more appealing. And I hope 4 years from now, I know for a fact when there's going to be the unique set of struggles in my next company. And if that goes on for an extended period of time where there's even more direct comparison because all my peers are making a shit ton more money or like all those external like, points of success, I hope I can continue reminding myself that I just need to stretch that window and allow myself to fail now so the story can sound good later.
I absolutely love how you put that because like I try to calculate and I think about things in a very calculated way as deeply as I can. But generally, like I'm just a vibes guy. I will abstract something into like live a story worth telling, right? I think about like the reason I like the startup space is because, well, it interests me. I think you grow as a person the most because you're constantly challenged more than probably any other field and constantly challenged in different ways. But I've never abstracted that out to just live a story worth telling. And that is beautiful. I think that's one thing I'm going to take away from this conversation for sure. You mentioned while talking about style that all of the effort that you put in, the worth of you and style is not just based on whether one person, the bias of that one person, whether they decide to put money into it or not, but it's decided by the effort and everything that went into style. But isn't that bordering on delusion? Because if other people, if you're not getting that external validation, if you're just getting that internal validation, like I solved these problems, I created this, that's great. But if no one cares and you still think that's great, isn't that kind of delusional?
Yeah. There's definitely a fine line. You need to have these constant gauges to make sure you aren't like, again, deluding yourself. And I think the fact that there were at least some metrics of success that I'd set up for myself. And 2 years prior, if I told myself you're going to achieve these things, I'd be like, oh my God, like I can't wait for that day to come about. Like deep down, having hit those things, I could say that even if the person who ended up buying the company, who I can't name for now, didn't buy the company, yes, I wouldn't be as proud of myself. 100% I wouldn't be as proud of myself. But I wouldn't have considered all of it to have been a total waste. And I also want to caveat all of this and like my prior comments about like why I want to be a founder by just saying it comes from such a massive point of privilege to be able to choose your own career. And the fact that if I go hungry and like not have a roof over my head because like I'm deluding myself working in a startup that isn't making any money. The fact that all of that is not a real risk for me, because worst comes to worst, my parents will make sure that I can feed myself and live safely. That's the reason why it's a lot easier for me to be this pretentious about like, oh, live story. Like most people can't, right? They want to, but they just can't. I think given that I had that opportunity to do so, I think it would have been delusional to ignore the fact that I had that privilege, think that I had to work a job that I hated, and go down that path.
Do you think that everybody should leverage the power of their privilege to the nth degree? And do you think that the kind of circles that you're spending time in, people are doing that? And what does that mean to you actually, leveraging the power of your privilege?
Like to me, it was the privilege that I had unlocked the freedom to be able to do what I wanted to do, not what I had to do. My dad, for instance, had to work a job before he could start a company because he had to bootstrap his way to it, right? I didn't have to do that. Now, to the nth degree, it gets a bit more complicated, right? Like, now you're asking me like about like the nth degree of nepotism, should people leverage their privilege? I think regardless of what I say, they're going to. And hand to their heart, like if they're still like using that platform to then grow, I think it's fine. Like I think it's Aditya Birla's son who's like doing like, Kotak, Mahindra's son, who's doing like fantastic stuff now, right? Mukesh Ambani, like leveraged his privilege from Dhirubhai Ambani, but he used it as a base to build something huge. I think those stories I still like respect just as much as someone who started from zero. This is probably going to be controversial, but I think the 1 to 100 game is incredibly hard. It's not just the 0 to 1 game. But yeah, I think this is like a super personal question, whatever you think is going to give you more fulfillment, however things become easier for you to do, like don't impose more burdens and problems on yourself. Those will come. I promise you those will come, right? Just like make use of the stuff that you have access to and go from there.
Yeah, I like I had a very 4 simple metrics for my day when I was back in Canada. I'm probably going to do something similar now that I've moved back. But like there's enough complexity in life that you have to navigate, right? And so instead of me like having a really long to-do list of, okay, this is what I have to do, and just kind of getting bogged down by, oh, when will I have time to do this? When will I have time to do that? I came up with just 4 simple rules for a day. I wake up at 5:30. 5:30 to 9:30, first 4 hours of the day. No distractions. So I can either work, I can read, I can do nothing. A lot of the times I just sat on the couch and just stared at the wall for a few hours. Honestly, you get to process life a lot, so it's not bad. The third rule, go to the gym at 9:30 in the morning. So honestly, a lot of my day is already done by, let's say, 11. Like I've put in 4 good hours of work, maybe 3, whatever. I've already got the gym out of the way. And then the last one is no screens after 9:30. I actually tried to sleep by 10, but I didn't. So I just did no screens at 9:30. I slept earlier. And so just by just making 4 simple rules to follow, I became significantly more productive. I became happier, and that was interesting. So I like that you said that. Yeah, don't overcomplicate things. Don't put a lot of these pressures on yourself, because they'll come. They will come. Just try to keep it as simple as possible, and I like that.
And they'll be different for everyone.
Oh, for sure.
You can't be living someone else's life.
Oh, definitely.
And walking the same race that someone else is. It's not going to happen.
So I used to be like that. And actually on the flight back from San Francisco, when we'd sealed the deal, I was excitedly sitting next to Rahul in the airplane and I was writing, every single day for the next year, I'm going to wake up at 5:30, I'm going to go for a run, walk for 12 hours, go to bed and repeat. And I was so excited to execute that. And then it's when I came back, I had that earth-shattering realization of like, I actually don't like living such a calculated, like productivity-focused lifestyle. And what actually makes me really damn happy is 15 minutes before going to bed every night, I'm watching reels and I'm laughing and I'm learning something new. And I enjoy that so much to the point where I now have decided I'm not going to try to push myself to be that like productive. And it's okay if like, I know I'm doing my best during the day, but like, I don't want to be waking up at 5:30 and I don't want to not be like watching my reels at night. As long as like it doesn't affect my days in between. So I will say like, it was sort of a lot of that Silicon Valley propaganda of that is the way you need to be living. That in turn made it a very, very toxic mindset for me because I thought I can't make it because I can't live life the way these guys do. But I think there is a middle ground where you don't have to be that extreme. And I'm hoping I get to thread the needle in that way as well. Where some days, yes, I will wake up at 5:30 and some days I will be so exhausted that I won't watch my reels. But like, I'm no less capable of being successful just because I have those little blemishes in my day-to-day. So I think that's like an important message for people as well.
I agree, absolutely. I don't think you need to have a strict routine for it to happen. But there's no substitute for the hours you put in. Well, okay. Not necessarily the hours you put in. I think good judgment most of the time goes further than hard work. But at some level, there's no substitute for that hard work. Like you might be putting in those 12, 15-hour days like you did with Style. You might do that in the morning. You might do that in the afternoon. You might break it up. You might do whatever, but you're doing it. There's no way to outcompete people who are living, breathing, sleeping what they do. Because they're just going to be ahead, right?
Yeah, I think I've just come to value the quality of input more than the quantity.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, this goes back to what I was saying, like my consumption of social media has just completely changed where like, I'm like micro learning through every reel that I'm watching. And also like my feed is full of like new AI tools and a couple of stand-up comedians that make me laugh before going to bed and some fun facts that like I would share with friends afterwards. So, maybe it's just different from like the doom scrolling of just watching like stupid car crashes or something like that arguably has no value before going to bed.
There's a layer of toxic productivity that is just Silicon Valley propaganda, right? You have built a startup, sold a startup. How much of that was maybe rooted or not rooted at all in that building process between you and your co-founder? And how do you see that shift in your productivity patterns now?
So and let me be clear before someone like corroborates my past tweets with what I'm like hopping on about right now. I have put out tweets in the past glorifying how my Indian engineers were up at 4 a.m. or these kids who were trying to get a job with me sent me, there was a Hindustan Times article written up about this because it got that controversial. Exactly. 2:47 a.m. I hired him because he was working that late at night. Like, A, I think that's the old me, but B, I don't think that's like not me at all anymore. I think hard work is table stakes. I just think there's like periods of time where you can be running and like sprinting, but ultimately it's a marathon. So you want to make sure you don't burn out. And there are some very special athletes who can be sprinting for like half that marathon. And I'm in complete awe of those people. And I will continue to celebrate them. So I will preemptively, I'm safeguarding this against being cancelled in the future, will continue to celebrate people who can put in those hours. All I'm saying is that's not me because I've realized I can't put in that quality if I'm consistently up at 4 a.m. like for eternity. What was your question? This is becoming let me make sure I don't get cancelled in this podcast.
No, I completely get that also because I work in sprints. Like I'll work really hard for a few months and then for about a week, 2 weeks, nothing.
Yeah.
And then I'll work a few months and then a week, 2 weeks.
Similar,
nothing.
for sure. It's like you find that window of time, you're like, I'm going to go all in. So many things happen. You're like, it's not even that you want peace, but like you just retreat and you start breathing and you're like, maybe I should start walking in this marathon for like a mile or two.
Yeah.
And then we can reset. And when we reach mile 18, we'll try to just finish the marathon. You know what I mean?
And you know what it really is? As I'm like reflecting now, momentum defeats all feelings of being burnt out. In the summer, I never felt like I was working too hard. I never felt like I was sacrificing not going out. It was just everything was breaking every single day. We were going viral. There was so much excitement. Like I wanted to be doing that. And then when the growth slowed down, we went back to the semester and I started like actively making more time and it felt like a sacrifice to be working. Then I was like, shit, man, I'm burnt out. Like I need to take a break. So that's why I think like it's not even about like how long is that marathon going to be, but periods when you sprint just because it's so fun to be, so you want to be spending through that, I think is really magical. And therefore, having opportunities to work on something that's scaling that fast and breaking all the time. And a lot of times, like people who aren't founders, who aren't in startups look down upon that because they're like, oh my God, like work-life balance, where is that going? I think that's why people in startups know that like, this is work-life balance. Like this is so fun and this is going to get me to work-life balance because life is long and eventually I will be slowing down. But this is the time I want to be going all in.
I wanna connect this to something you told us before the podcast, where you were speaking about a friend and his potential. This work-life balance that you've seen, you've created, you've built a startup, is a lot of the excitement, the drive to find what your true potential is, or is there a deeper meaning or a deeper purpose to why you're actually doing what you're doing?
I think it's really hard to generalize because again, it comes from such a place of privilege to be like building a startup straight out of college. So it cannot be tied to someone's aptitude. It's definitely a function of the circumstance as well. And in that capacity of just being able to speak at a person level, this just goes back to the whole live stories worth telling. That's why I'm doing it.
What do you fear the most?
No one's going to tell your story and listen to it.
You imagine a reel of Dhruv just tearing up.
I don't like your story.
Travis Kelce are still dating, but nobody wants to talk about my story.
I'm trying to pick because I have so many fucking fears, man.
Tell all of them.
Oh, we're gonna be here a while.
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to speak to them, bro.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's all the typical stuff, right? There's I haven't been in a relationship for 3 years. There's like, oh, am I gonna find, like, I really want a nice family life. Is that like that whole thing? There's, of course, I want to make sure in my next company, like, we're successful there. At some point, I don't want to live with my parents forever. I want to be able to stand on my own 2 feet as well. It'd be nice to ignore the fact that safety net exists. So some sort of material success coming out of the startup. Things can go so well for like 9 years, but you don't exit as a founder in the 10th year. There's like a pandemic and everything goes to zero. Like those stories happen all the time, right? So of course, there's all sorts of career insecurities there as well. But I think I'm honestly not focusing on that stuff anymore. I'm just so excited because I've realized like even when things seem to all be like going to zero, I think the person who bought the company, I keep like almost slipping his name, when he or she or they, when he decided he wanted to buy us, that was fate. Like there was very little I did to make that happen, and so much of the universe just conspiring to bring that to life that genuinely after this experience, I feel a lot more settled in just being like, things will work out. Like I just got to lead my life with integrity, with purpose and with intention, and things will work out. So scared about a lot. I know all of it is out of my control, so I try not to think about it too much. Is the TLDR.
Do you manifest?
So I pray when I want to hit 100,000 downloads. I was during the summer doing affirmations every morning, which I'm going to restart as soon as I go back to SF. I don't know if I like manifest like systematically, but when I'm hoping something happens, like, yeah, I pray, or like I talk to my parents about it all the time, and my mom's huge into that, so she will start like chanting that this is gonna happen. But I think the other thing with me is also I like telling people that it's probably not gonna work out, because that to me de-risks the reputational risk of when it doesn't work out. And that's just always been me. Like my friends will like attest to this as well. That like I will be that kid who walks out of an exam being like, oh, I failed. And a part of me genuinely does believe that I've done a lot worse than I actually have. But the other part is just like preemptively insurance against on the off chance that I do fail. And it's so funny because the few moments that I feel like I've actually done well and like I'll say that to my friends, it'll just go completely against me. For example, like the last final exam I ever took at Duke is my econometrics exam. 3-hour paper. I finished in 1 hour and 50 minutes. I didn't think I did that well, but I thought I did like reasonably well. So I got up, Like, I was that kid who's like noisy while getting up, so everyone in the exam hall knows he's finished it. And these kids are anxious because they're on page 4 and this guy's finished 13 pages. Submitted. It's my last exam ever. I'm walking back to my house feeling super happy. I've completed my college degree. My grade comes in. I get a 39 out of 100. So I'm like, let me just go back to the Dhruv Bindra in the 10th grade who's just telling everyone he's failed, because like when you tell people it went well, you actually failed. Thankfully, it wasn't all my grades, so I still passed and I got my degree, but that could have been really bad.
Under promise, over deliver. I've
Yes.
always believed in that, because it also I feel like it makes people respect you more. Also, it for me, it does stem from the fear thing, as you said. I don't want to be that guy who's like, oh, I've done really fucking well and then something went wrong, because something can always go wrong,
And they will.
and it will go wrong. And so under promise, over deliver. But it also makes people respect you more, because they're like, oh, if he thought this went bad and this was great, fuck, this guy must be,
And
Yeah.
there's a
And so-
level of self-awareness that comes with that as well.
Yeah.
Like, and under-promising, over-delivering actually, I believe, gives you a lot more momentum.
Yeah.
When you do over-deliver, you're like, this is the insurance piece. Like, it's working out for me. And the more I under-promise, the more respect I garner. And I just got to keep doing what I'm doing and put my head down and do it. Because it's clearly putting me into like a brighter future, a better place.
But as you said, there is definitely that part of you that's like, this probably is true. Like I feel I might be under promising, but I don't really feel like it completely. You know what I mean? So I get that. Yeah.
I also think there's like some cultural idiosyncrasy to this, where like in India, it is frowned upon to be super flashy. And so under-promising is on the same level as modesty. And that's really like well received in Indian society. So that's probably why we're all geared this way too.
Maybe.
So I wanna pull it back a little bit, where you were speaking about that internal dialogue of yours that you always had, pre-style versus post-style, and everything that's happened. What has been that internal shift in your dialogue now, in terms of maybe how you approach people, how you approach the world, seeing what you've seen, and also being very successful at a very young age?
Yeah, so 3 things, 2 of which I've already said. The first is pay it forward to unproven kids. I want to take more chances on kids who are currently struggling and people aren't picking up their cold calls and DMs because they haven't made it yet. And I don't want to do it on the off chance that they're successful and I believed in it. No, I genuinely just to support them. Because I know how much it meant to me when people took a bet on me. Wow, I've forgotten the other 2. It was, wait, what was your question? Oh, pre-style, post-style. Okay, the second thing that I wanted to talk about the second was fate. The fact that things will eventually work out. I feel a lot more like assured that on a long enough time horizon, it'll work out. I think the third learning has been, this is actually a Y Combinator video I watched a couple of weeks ago. It was something like advice for your 20s. And they talk about a way to hack your hedonic treadmill. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Okay. So for people who don't know what the hedonic treadmill is, it's basically that like no matter how much you achieve or how much you lose, all your emotional state regresses back to like this emotional baseline. So it's like, oh, you buy like a fancy car today, eventually you drive that car enough, you're like, oh, I want like a Bugatti, then you get a Bugatti, you keep driving, like, oh, I want a private jet, and like it never stops, right? So you keep feeling like it's not enough. So what they advise in the video, and this was along the time that like the transaction was happening and Rahul and I like, oh, what are you going to buy with your money and this, that? They said in your 20s, if you find yourself suddenly like having the ability to spend, slow down your hedonic treadmill and control your purchases. So even if you can afford a much nicer car, settle for a car that's like 50% of that, because you're giving yourself more runway to continue experiencing the momentary highs of getting something new before that just like flatlines and feels like this is like normal. And I think that's been so nice, not only from a budgeting perspective, but also from like making sure that I continually have things within my budget that I can look forward to. That I think has been something that I like, has been another like really interesting perspective.
I really like that perspective on it, because so I'm that way, but not because of that. I'm that way for a fear of, oh, I should invest it so that later on I'm okay. But I really like this. I'm going to think of it this way instead.
Yeah.
It's more positive.
I like the entire concept of the hedonic treadmill, and I watched that video as well.
Yeah.
And just the framing and the structure of that video was so incredible. something that I think most 20-year-olds, if not all, need to hear. No matter whether you believe you're doing well, no matter if you feel like you're a failure or you've had immense success, that's something for everyone. And I think we all need to build frameworks in our own life that push us forward, because the treadmill doesn't stop. Are you running in the same place, or are you gonna keep moving around? Maybe find a treadmill in Turks and Caicos and in the Caribbean, move around, you know.
And there's a fine line to this as well, and it goes back to like what gives you the most personal happiness. Like I had this Dadaji, not mine, like a cousin Dadaji. He used to live by this. It's a phrase. There's a cousin Chachu, cousin Dadaji. It's like Dadaji's cousin. So he used to live by this philosophy. It was so funny. It was spend and God will send. And he believed that so much that he would live paycheck to paycheck. But these are massive paychecks, and continued working really damn hard because he wanted to like unlock the next thing. And that was his big propellant. And he passed away a very wealthy man, like having built generational wealth for his family as well. So no like irresponsible spending. Some will say he was just like, it was blind luck. Others will be like, no, like the hedonic level, he knew what was going to propel him. For some people, maybe if you don't get the best possible thing right now, there's like a window of complacency that can sort of seek in. So there's no like one size fits all policy. Maybe you want to invest because that makes you feel a lot better, but like each to their own. But ultimately just know that this exists and prepare for it mentally.
How do you feel like people in their 20s, because of the external influence that we have specifically with social media, how do you feel people in their 20s are approaching money right now? And what would you have to say based on just the life that you have lived and built?
This is something my dad tells me all the time, which I'm like trying to make myself believe, which is people in their 20s right now, and money is just a means to getting this, is they for some reason believe this is the decade to have fun. And my dad's thing is you will have fun all your life. And so you don't need to be in a rush to have to like experience everything right now, because if you're working really hard right now, like you will be able to travel the world even when you're 35, 40. Granted, it won't be the same. Like some people want to like go to raves and stuff, won't be like physically able to do that. I'm not that kind of guy anyways, but I think that's really been, I think like the one big point of difference between the way that I view spending my 20s versus my friends. Not completely to the extreme that my dad sort of preaches about. Like I still think this is an important decade to prioritize fun for sure. But I hope maybe that can help change someone's perspective and like how to lead it. And like the other thing was also like Sam Altman says this all the time, right? Which is like, you're going to have to work hard at some point. It's a lot easier to work hard in your 20s because then you can like slow down in your 30s. But if you just party all of your 20s, your 30s, like, oh my God, now you have kids and responsibilities. You have to work thrice as hard.
I have a question for you. So, okay, I have this friend. He's in tech also. Really good engineer. He works for a startup, enjoys the job. Really, he actually really likes it. But he wants to start his own thing. But he's getting paid a shit ton of money. And there's a risk with starting your own thing. But he does love working for that startup. What would you say to him?
This is chapter 1 of the leap you took, and things will not work out for a period of time and you will regret going back. But if you stick it out long enough, taking a word for it that he's a competent individual, the story is going to be so fucking good by the end of it.
Good advice.
I feel like also with something like that, there's a fear of failure, but then also like the anticipation of failure and regret.
Yes.
And it's tough for them to zoom out and see the bigger picture because you have a healthy paycheck, you have a good life. But that's where this is important, right? Is you are in your 20s, and if truly, we both have started really, really believing in internalizing this. If you don't do it now, responsibilities increase, your desire to do decreases because your life changes right now exponentially, but at some point it's a lot more linear because you have to care for a lot more people.
Yeah.
And until you have only yourself to care about in this context, go all in and do what scares you but you love. Because you'll come out on the other side having learned something. Yeah. And you could very well fail at it, but fuck that, because you'll be a 28-year-old failure who's learned from it versus a 28-year-old who's regretted something. There's a very Stark contrast.
I'm gonna clip this, listen to this on your flight back, and then think about your move. We talked about this last night. I'll clip this for you, don't worry.
Jeff Bezos has this, right? Which is his philosophy is, I think he calls it like the regret minimization framework,
Yes.
which is if he's on his deathbed looking back, what are things that he would have regretted not trying out? And I think for the vast majority of people, it's once they've unlocked the base threshold of like ramen profitability, so like you will not go hungry if you quit your job. There's no excuse really to not start your own thing, and most people regret not doing that. So maybe you
I
should
love
clip that
that.
as well. And
I live
keep
by
doing this.
regret minimization. That's been my biggest metric for decision making. My move back was regret minimization. I feel like it's important to think about things carefully, sure, but at the end of the day, if you abstract it all down to one thing, it is like you can't. Regret is one thing I really don't know how I would deal with, because there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Like if I'm 40, 50, 60 and I look back and I'm like, fuck, like I genuinely deep down wish I did this, but I can't now. You have one life. It's never coming back. Time is never coming
It's
back.
the only thing with no do-overs.
How?
You
Man,
need to
that's scary
internalize
as
that.
shit. No, I'm with you. That's
It's funny because the friends of mine who have taken the leap of faith are actually lesser privileged. And I don't know, it's a very interesting conundrum, right? You'll find a subset of people who have the privilege and have taken the leap of faith. But I think with privilege comes comfort, and with comfort comes like a lack of ambition or desire. There's
an expectation. If you're privileged, you're expected to be good.
absolutely. You have lesser to prove, I think, when you're privileged. Whereas when you're not privileged,
No, I feel like you have more to prove. Because like if your dad's done well, fuck, you should do well.
that's the expectation.
Yes.
So, but for someone who doesn't have that same level of privilege, they have no choice. Like they need to figure their life. It goes back to the lives that our parents lived, right? They didn't have a choice. They had to work a job. They had to get their shit done. And I think there's a very interesting conundrum between the risk that the lesser privileged versus the more privileged take in society, and that perspective is different for everyone. But it's a unique proposition for sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious about one more thing. If you had to go back in your journey where you started in entrepreneurship, what are things that you'd potentially swipe right and left on?
Nothing. This is a cliche, but like everything happens for a reason. I'm so happy I had those periods when no one believed in me and things weren't working out at all. I think that brought me a lot closer with my parents as well. I really leaned on them for emotional support. And that just made me value the success so much more. I guess the one small thing is I wish we never built our own recommender system in-house. This is so small and technical, but I wish we did that because I wanted to build like the product of my dreams. And I now have the opportunity to do that I'm like super, super excited about.
I'm happy to hear that.
It's rewarding to hear that, especially having built something of your own and now having sold it and still being so excited for what's to come next. That is incredible. And I think a lot of people probably go through that existential crisis in that exact period where you build something, you sell it, and then you sit back and you're like, what the fuck do I do with my life now?
Yeah.
But you have that exciting opportunity that you're in, and I think that's going to be very good for you.
And there was like a huge outcry of people being like, why are you diluting down? Why are you selling? And a lot of like founders who sold their company also being like, yes, there's this period where you feel like you've like lost your baby almost. But I think I'm like so lucky that this like immediate next step was so apparent and feels like a step up. Time will tell if it was like, the right decision or not. I'm very, very optimistic.
And yeah, from what I gather, also, sure, you've diluted, but the way you talk about it, you've now suddenly got so many more resources and tools at your disposal that your baby is going to grow up better, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's good. I think it's a great decision and you seem very happy with it. And that's great.
I'm super excited. Yeah.
That's great.
We love a healthy child.
We've spoken about this a lot, but we always end the pod with this question, so I'm going to ask it anyway. If you have, given everything that you've been through, if you have one piece of advice to give to people in their 20s, what would it be?
So my dad tells me, it's on my screensaver on my phone, and I said this before as well, just 3 words: hard work pays dividends. It doesn't matter
A
if
fucking quote machine, bro.
it should be my dad. No, like, it could not be more true. Like, that's what I was saying, right? Like, if we weren't bought out, the reason why all of it would still have been worth it, in my opinion, is because I know the person that came out of it was fundamentally different from the boy who started that company. And that's just because of all the reps that were put in over the course of those 2 years. So yes, I feel a lot more happier having had the external validation of like a dollar amount that's been attributed to that process. But the dividends it would have paid would have been in softer softer ways that would have been apparent maybe later on in my journey. And yeah, I like, people shy away from working hard because they're so result oriented, but you just need to expand your window, because sometimes the dividends take a longer time for their payout. But keep at it, it will happen. The story is just gonna be so much fucking cooler.
I fucking love that.
Love that.
Work hard, pay your dues, and keep watching Panoramic Perspectives. We appreciate you guys joining another episode, and we love you all. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.
Thanks for being on.